is we're seeing this big surge of interest in women's sports in particular. The WNBA is having a great period. Netflix just picked up the rights to the Women's World Cup. I remember during the Final Four a couple years ago, I was at a hotel somewhere and went downstairs into the bar, and it was all guys my age kind of jumping up and down and having beers and cheering. And then I looked up and they were watching Caitlin Clark in the Final Four. So it feels to me like there's this real increase in how invested people are, and it's not just the people that you sort of normally see traditionally as fans of women's sports, but just kind of across the board, people are finding things to get engaged about. And I'm wondering, and Michelle, maybe we can start with you on this one since you're at one of the leagues, but have you noticed that, and to what do you attribute this increase in interest? And does that increase have anything to do with Gen Z or anything to do with new ways to connect with athletes through technology, do you think?
Yeah, so I would say I think 2023 was a pivotal year for women's sports. I think this really kind of marked the beginning of the surge that we're witnessing today. And it really started with the rivalry, but the undeniable talent of both Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese during their college careers. And during that year, to your point, the championship, I mean, their championship grew averaged 18.9 million viewers. That was higher by a sizable amount compared to the men's championship. And this was unheard of. This is the first time the women's championship actually beat the men's championship. And then we also that momentum actually carry on to the next year where, Caitlin Clark was in the championship again. And then when both her and Angel moved on to WNBA, we definitely saw an increase in our viewership. In fact, last season was the most viewed season we've had in 24 years, outperforming both the NHL and MLB regular seasons. And people sit there and say, well, maybe that's because of the Caitlin Clark being the Indiana Fever. But even if you took the Indiana Fever out of the equation, our viewership would still have been up 79% year over year. And so even with the Paige joining our league this year, we just had our new season kickoff last week, and we had the most viewed opening week in 21 years, drawing about 1.3 million. So I really think this is just the beginning, and I can't wait to see where this goes. But I think a number of factors have played a role in the surge. I think representation. Women, I think, women growing up playing sports and then seeing themselves on television, I think has definitely helped drive the viewership. I think to your point, technology, having greater access to the players, and be able to follow the players, get to know the players on a different and more personal level. I think all of this plays a role. And I also think too, like I said earlier, the political climate, the way that the how sports provide some escapism, and just kind of bringing light to people's lives. I think all of that has been playing a role into driving the viewership for women's sports in general.
Yeah, it's been really exciting and interesting to see the surge in recent years. And I think it beyond just the actual games being consumed more, just the increase in social engagement around it, the increase in brands being interested in being around it, and the opportunities that opens up for different storytelling. I think I've been at Whistle for like 12 years, and I've been really happy and pleasantly surprised to see in the last 3 or 4 years how our formats and longer form storytelling and podcasts and conversations are really clicking that much more within the women's sports space, and how much more interest there's been from brands, and hearing some of the stories from these athletes that are becoming that much more prominent now. I don't think that's going to slow down anytime soon. I think with the broader World Cup upcoming, and then even I know it's still a few years out, but with the Olympics, those become bigger opportunities to also spotlight other female athletes beyond the WNBA and other sports. So I don't think there's any reason to see that momentum slow down anytime soon. I think we saw a ton coming out of the NCAA tournament a few years ago, and it has really sustained itself.
And I think the distribution and the reach for these sports are going to grow. So like the WNBA next year is going to have a much wider distribution model, where now instead of being on CBS Sports, we're going to be on CBS. And I think you're going to start seeing more women's sports having greater presence and on these bigger networks and streaming platforms, which will then increase the reach and awareness of the sports itself.